right, guys, welcome back to another fly tying session. We are mixing it up tonight, and we are not going to go with a beer tonight. We are going with a nice 12-year scotch. Cheers. All right, I'm going to flip the camera around and go through the material list, and we'll get started. Okay, so the pumpkin head, a classic still water pattern. In the vise, I've got a size 12 Nymph hook 1X, and we've paired that with a fluorescent orange 7/64 brass bead. Yeah, this is a classic pattern. I can't believe this is our 7th video already for the tying sessions. If you've missed any of the first ones, these are basically where you just sit back, spin up I don't know, half dozen or so flies and have a drink, relax. It's a nice rainy evening again here in Vancouver. I'm just adding some Marabou here for the tail. I believe this is the dark sculpin color. I'll check here in a second. Fish Hunter Marabou, Nature Spirit. This is actually just a dark olive. So I've attached the feather to the hook. I've kind of run my run the thread just to cinch all of the loose feathers down there, the loose plumes, and we're just going to cut our tail. So again, what we're kind of aiming for is you want the same length as the shank of the hook into the tail, and in these ones you can even go just a little bit longer just to add a little bit of movement in the water. We are going to add some crystal flash for the tail. I've got a root beer color. Root beer, it looks really nice with the olive. It's got a nice contrast. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So I just got 2 strands. We're just going to come straight over top and walk this down the side. I'll do my side here first, and then flip this over and do the camera side here. And then we can trim those off. I like to trim them just a little bit longer than the tail, just so it stands out a little bit more. Just like that. Quick little shout out to our last our last leech video. I think his name was Eric. Eric's like, you know, you don't need to trim off the crystal flash to add more. All you need to do is fold it over. And we're kind of getting back into that groove now. We've tied a handful of flies. We're feeling a little bit more efficient on the vise. We're moving on here. We've got some wire. So this is an olive wire in a size small that we're going to be adding in. So with the wire, I'm going to put this right in behind that bead. And what the wire does is it just adds a level of durability to the fly. And it'll protect the hackle from coming unraveled. So for the body of this fly, we're going to stick with the green. We're going to be doing the Arizona semi-seal, and this is a dark olive again. So some nice colors there. And we're going to be doing a dubbing noodle. So I just got a little bit of dubbing in my hand. We're going to add that to the thread here, then just kind of twist it on. And then we can just wrap that for the body. I'm just going to take out a clump. And we'll just keep going right up to that bead. And add just a smidgen more there just behind the bead. There we go. Yeah, so we're mixing it up tonight. All the other tying sessions we've done the beer, so I've got a nice 12-year scotch. This is it's called the Glen Grant. Just delicious. That is good. Cheers, guys. Okay, so now for the Hackle, which we're gonna tie in. I went out and bought these saddle Hackle feathers. This is an orange color, grizzly Hackle, and they're expensive. I mean, you can buy a whole half or whole saddle. No, sorry, you can buy a whole cape or a half cape. I just went with a few because I don't really, well, I only need maybe about a dozen more for my fly box, so I didn't need a whole crazy amount of orange feathers. So we just went with a smaller amount, but it was expensive. It was like 14 bucks for those. So I'm gonna tie that in, pinch off our stem, and then on the underside here, I'm just gonna rip off a couple. Yeah, you know what? I did do that backwards. So before, what I should have done here is if you take the bottom feathers off, when you go to do that initial wrap around it, it's more of a cleaner tie-in. So I've got the tie-in point. I tried to get ahead of myself there. Snip off the end. Now that I've ripped off those bottom feathers, when I go to wrap this, it's just nice and neat. And I can go around in open segments all the way up the fly. Right to where we tied in our wire. And then with the wire, I come over and then you go underneath. And then you kind of grab hold of that Hackle feather. And then you can just bring the wire through. And if you kind of wiggle it a little bit, you don't trap as many of the Hackle feathers. And we're basically just open wrapping that segment, or the wire in open segments up to that bead. We can lock it in. So before I get to there, I'm just gonna brush everything back a little bit, just so we don't trap any of the feathers right around the bead. And we can lock that in. And then just helicopter the wire off. Come in and snip that Hackle off. Careful not to snip your tail or any of the other Hackle feathers. But yeah, there you have it. So very simple pattern to tie. I promise you, as we move along here in the next videos, we'll get into some more advanced flies. This is just a classic. I mean, it's a woolly bugger pattern, but it's been nicknamed the Pumpkinhead by Mr. John Kent. So there we go. Classic fly pattern. Great in still water. You can troll with this thing. It's a great attractor pattern. You can cast, you can retrieve with it. Yeah, fish goes, especially in the fall, fish tend to go pretty crazy for it. They've definitely caught my fair share of beautiful rainbows putting this on the fly when nothing else seems to work. So green thread on the hook, and then just dress the hook. Bring your thread back to the curve, and then back up to the bead. And we can tie in our feather. So for the Marabou feather, all I'm doing is just taking maybe like an inch, half inch worth of plumes off one side. Come in here, cut off the point just to get a nice tie-in. And then just wrap our thread around. and then just work our thread back to that curve. And again, we can rip off our tail here and add our crystal flash. Yeah, so it was Eric that he's like, when you put in the flash, I guess on the balanced leech I did before, I think it was the balanced leech, I basically came in here, snipped this off, and then snipped that off and added more. But all you gotta do is just fold this back like this. Just saves time. There we go. So our tail's got a bit of flash in there. It'll help stand out in the water. And I'm not sure where I put my wire. Oh, there it is. Add our wire. Tie that in. Right back to where the tail starts. And then we can bring our dubbing forward. When you're doing the dubbing, less is more. Start off with a little bit. And then just keep adding. If you put too much on there, you'll notice that it kind of breaks away from the thread a little bit, and it just kind of looks, it gets on that sloppy kind of look to it. So we want to keep things tight and just wrap this up right behind the bead. And then, as I said on the first one, I always like to add a little bit just behind the bead, just to kind of give it more of a complete kind of look. Don't worry about if it's, you can see the there's a bit of, it's trailing up there a little bit. Once you add the hackle to it, it's that'll all disappear. Cheers. Okay. So let's do this right this time. So I peel off some feathers just to give us a tying point, and then I take the bottom part where I'm going to tie in, rip those off as well. So when I tie this in, you can trim off that stem. And now when I wrap, we get a nice clean seat. And we will bring, open wrap that back. The feather's not touching, so it's an open segment wrap. But it looks bushy and buggy as hell. And we'll bring our wire underneath. And then counter wrap this back, making sure that trailing feather stays out of our way. Oh, just bumped the camera. So that's just gonna, by counter wrapping the wire, just gonna make sure that everything, it's just a level of durability, really. So we'll bring that to the front, bring our thread over, just kind of bring their feathers back. So we don't want to try to trap as less as we can there. And then helicopter the wire off. Save your scissors, use the helicopter method. Just keep going around and around, and then eventually that wire will break. If you use your scissors, you'll dull them pretty quick. And then we can come in with our whip finish tool. A couple spins with the whip finish. And we will be on to fly number 3. Yeah, the pumpkin head. I've also tied these with a red bead as well, so I guess that kind of takes away from the pumpkin aspect of the fly, but I find that the red bead works great too. Dress that hook. I did save you guys the time with all of the hooks and the beads. I went ahead and did that first. Okay, so I guess I'll just finish dressing the hook here. Bring that thread back to the front, and we can tie in our feather. Right, grab that, about an inch, half inch. Just enough so it looks bushy. Cut off our tips. Nice tie-in point right behind the bead. And then just walk that back. Be careful of that hook point, be careful of that barb. And then we can bring our thread forward and snip off the rest to form our tail. So this one's going to be a bit bushier of a tail. I mean, I could come in here and clean it up a little bit, make it a bit smaller, but a little bit more movement in the water. That'll never hurt. That'll never hurt. The fish will like that. And we got our root beer flash. Tie that in, trim it just a little bit longer than that tail. Grab our wire. And then just for the sake of keeping everything neat there. There we go. And then we just bring our wire back right to that base. And we can add our dubbing. We had someone mention, I believe it was Tom. He said we were using some wine colored beads, and he's like, you should be drinking some wine with that one, and I totally agree. Maybe next time. Next time, Tom. Okay. Get our dubbing body here. Just gonna add a little bit more. I knocked the thread and it jumped. That's okay. Okay. Grab our Hackle feather. It's easy if you kind of spray it back a little bit and then rip them off that way. Rip off the bottom. Tie that in, snip off the stem. Almost looked like it wasn't seated properly there. And then we can just start wrapping this back. Super buggy, right? Bring our wire forward, open segments, all the way up to right behind the bead. Pull those feathers back. And then we can helicopter this guy off. Trim our hackle. So you can see those, there's a couple of feathers there at the front that I've trapped, but once we do our, oh man, even more. Once we do our whip finish here, yeah, not the best, but you can kind of play with it a bit. Oh man. There we go. Okay. Hook in the vise, thread on the hook. Grab our feather. And just tie that in. Always remember to rip your marabou feathers off like that. Don't cut them. You just get a much more rugged, buggy look to it. Get our crystal flash. Bring our thread back just a bit. Tie that in on my side, tie it in on your side. And then just snip to length. I'm gonna leave my, actually I'm gonna take a little bit more wire. Add the wire to the fly, and bring our thread back, and we are ready with our dubbing again. I don't know if you guys can hear that rain, but it's coming down. It is a perfect night for fly tying. Usually when I'm fly tying, I got some, oh, see that's a little sloppy. Usually got some music on, or we'll have a hockey game or something on in the background. What do you guys listen to when you tie? Anything? I've done a couple Zoom meetings with buddies. That's always fun. Sit back and yeah, just kind of bullshit for an hour or two. Okay, I'm gonna grab another Hackle feather here. Rip those out and then rip off the bottom section. And there's our tie-in point. Snip off the excess stem. And then we can start wrapping here. Wrap that all the way back, nice and neat. And then we can come over here with our wire and we'll lock that feather in. And bring our wire up. The long feather was getting in the way, so I'm just going to trim that off now. So we got our wire. We're just going to lock that in. 2 wraps behind, a couple wraps in front. Helicopter that wire off. And then it's whip finish time. Couple turns with the whip finish. And we can snip our thread. The pumpkin head. All right. Okay, last one, and I actually ran out of hook, so I do need to add one more here. So we got our beads. Oh, dropped one of those on the floor. That will happen. And then our hooks. Hook in the vise. And this will be fly number 6. So thanks again for stopping by, guys. If you've made it this far in the video, really appreciate you watching it. Give us a like, give us a comment below. Let's get some conversation started here. Feel free to critique my tying. I am not a commercial fly tyer. I like to have fun. We're having fun. We tie for my box. I'm redoing my leech box right now. If you haven't seen the pattern of videos, so we definitely need a couple pumpkin heads in the fly box, and so should you. If your fly box doesn't have pumpkin heads in it, make sure you get some. Support your local fly shop. Buy from an independent fly tyer, or tie your own. Okay, the Marabou tail. As we inch our way back there, suck everything down, trim that to length. Take some root beer crystal flash. Other colors work well too. I just think that the olive crystal flash looks great with the root beer. You can use a pearl. A pearl color. You can use a UV color. It just kind of gives the tail a bit of a sex appeal, you know. Make it stand out in a crowd. Bring those fish in. Trim to length. One thing working with Marabou, you definitely make a mess. Yeah, the vacuum will be coming out tonight. And I've seemed to have lost that wire again. It blends in pretty well. Just gonna cut a little bit more here. Bring our wire back to the feather. Grab our dubbing. And dub forward. Just like that. If you find that the dubbing's not sitting on the thread properly, you can just wet your finger. Grab our hackle. Got a lovely hackle feather here. So you kind of do one complete turn initially, and then you can start to bring it back. The hackle feather also helps push water, so it will attract the fish that way as well. And there you have it, guys. It's a simple fly pattern. It is a deadly fly pattern. Make sure you have some of them in your fly box. When you hit that lake. Come in here with our whip finish. And trim off that hackle. And there you have it. Okay, well, thanks again, guys. Oh, we still got a little bit of scotch here left. cheers. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate you guys watching the video. And until next time, fish on.